I found a lot of the parallels for design basics actually written in the Bible. We talk about flow and harmony. And one of my favorites was focal point, because as our eyes are focused on a point in a room, we become at rest. And isn't that so true in our spiritual walk? Because as we're walking with the Lord, when we have our eyes focused where they're supposed to be, we can be at rest no matter what's going on around us.
Hey there, you're listening to the Girls Talking Life podcast, and I'm your host, Johanna. If you're like me, you love time with friends. I always leave feeling encouraged, inspired to try something different, or I've learned something new. So why not continue to grow even when we can't be with our girlfriends? We're not made to do life on our own. So in each episode of this show, I'll bring you a girl and her story to give you refreshing ideas to stir your soul. Let's walk this road together. Are you ready to talk life? Hey there, you are listening to episode 104 of the Girls Talking Life podcast. This is the last new episode for 2022. Over the next few weeks, I'll be re-releasing some top episodes from the past. You may not have heard them yet, so be sure to listen in while you're wrapping your gifts or driving to a holiday celebration. The Girls Talking Life Favorite 5 Gift Guide is here. This guide is a collection of my guests' favorites shared on the show that will make terrific gifts for your favorite people this season. The gift ideas are broken down into categories, linked to where you can find them online, and linked to the episode where they were shared. Find the link in the show notes to get your gift guide. Are you longing for peace, but mostly feeling overwhelmed? Do you want to truly celebrate the Prince of Peace instead of doing all the things? I know I do. Victoria Duerstock joins me for a conversation about how we can bring peace into our hearts and into our homes during the Christmas season. You'll hear us talk about how interior design elements parallel scripture, tips for peaceful Christmas decor, inviting peace into our hearts, and then sharing that with others through hospitality. Victoria is a multi-passionate creative and entrepreneur fueled mostly by coffee. She pursues her dreams with verve and intensity, and she is a wife and mom of 3. Victoria divides and conquers her never-ending to-do list while working to maintain her sanity and her pleasant demeanor. Everything we talk about, including how to connect with her, can be found on girlstalkinglife.com. Here is our conversation. Hey there, Victoria. Thanks so much for coming on Girls Talking Life.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be with you today.
I would love for you to tell me a little bit about you and what fuels you.
Ooh, a little bit. That is always a tough question because I don't know where to start, but a little bit about me. I'm a wife and a mom of 3. Believe it or not, they're all adults at this point. So it's kind of crazy to think that I'm a mother of 3 adult children because I'm way too young to have been at this point of my life.
Yes, you are.
I am also a musician, an author, now a publisher. I wear a few different hats, so there's a lot to tell.
I love that about you. And you have several books, and they range in topic, which is so fun. And some are on interior design and others on hospitality.
Yes.
So talk to me about your story about finding the parallel between design elements and God's word. So interesting.
It was really just such I don't know. It's been a journey. It wasn't one of those overnight accomplishments. One of the things that occurred for us early in our marriage was that I got pregnant and I got very sick. I was sick the entire time. It was not a pleasant experience. It's a wonder that we have 3 children because each one of them was a challenge during pregnancy. It was just hard, just hard. That's just the honest truth. But the very first pregnancy was pretty early in our marriage. And my husband was working in interior design. I was a musician. I was teaching music. And I found that I couldn't stand up in front of my classes anymore and teach because I would just feel green. I would need to leave and go be sick and then come back. So it was a very, very hard time for me because I wanted to keep doing my passion, but it was impossible to do that at the same time. And so I started working for my husband. So within that first year of marriage, I'm working for my husband. He's a firstborn. I'm an only child. I'll just let your imaginations run away with how wonderful that went. I was also hormonal because I was pregnant. So we worked through a lot of angsty marriage things early on in our marriage just because of the opportunity to go work with him and for him. And what was neat though was he was in this interior design industry, which is fun. I mean, us women enjoy, most of us, looking at beautiful furniture, being around all the different styles and different things that are possible, going to market and getting to do all of those things. So it was really neat, but I would question God, why am I doing this? This isn't what I trained for. This isn't me. And so we go 20 years down the road, 2 decades, and you start to see where I start to follow a passion of writing, which had come from just being a reader early on. And I had actually written a fiction book and tried to learn about the industry and had not gotten my foot in the door. And I kept sitting and thinking, what is it that I have experience with? What is it that I enjoy? And the initial things that I got my foot in the door with writing were short devotionals. I've always loved digging into God's word. I've always loved the idea of being able to share some of those nuggets of truth that I find whenever I am doing my personal study. So something that matters to me or something that steps on my toes, those are the things that I usually like to share with other people. And I had gotten some early jobs just writing work for hire and being part of some of those anthologies. And I thought, well, I'm finding some success here with short devotionals. And I also have a lot of experience in music, which there were no open doors for me to write about that. But what there was a really big resurgence of HGTV and other things like that. And I thought, how interesting would it be if there was a way to pull in some beautiful pictures, design, things like that attract many women and write about God's word. And is there a way to do that? And so as I started digging in and looking specifically for those things, I found a lot of the parallels for design basics actually written in the Bible. We talk about flow and harmony. And one of my favorites was focal point, because as our eyes are focused on a point in a room, we become at rest. And isn't that so true in our spiritual walk? Because as we're walking with the Lord, when we have our eyes focused where they're supposed to be, we can be at rest no matter what's going on around us. And so those were the things that started to really well up inside of me that I wanted to write about. I could see them everywhere. And when I pitched that actual project, the editor who picked it up was a passionate HGTV watcher. And she was like, this is great. I can see this market. And I was like, I'm glad somebody else can see it too, because I see it so vividly. And that's kind of how it got started. It was one of those, just the Lord had been orchestrating all of those events throughout time. And then kind of revealed for me as I was in my own study, working on my own things, how those parallels came together. And how neat is that?
I love that so much. And our homes are a big part of us.
Yes.
While I don't want to put too much emphasis on the actual house itself, the environment that we create, at least for me, that is a really important part of my life.
Oh, of course. And our families.
Yes. I love that you found this integration between the most important thing. That's so great.
It was a lot of fun. And honestly, it's easy, I think, to get wrapped up in the design or having the newest or best or latest or finest of things many times, but that's actually not what it's all about. It's actually finding great satisfaction in the Lord and having our hearts be in tune with Him, and then aligning our homes to do the same thing, which is why some of that writing has also included hospitality and that reaching out and toward our communities, because not only do we want our homes to be a safe place to land for our families and our husbands as they've come home from work or whatever, then it also needs to be a place where people feel welcomed.
Yes. So some of us have already transitioned our homes to Christmas at this point, and the rest of us probably will be very soon. When this airs, we will be on our way to get our Christmas tree. So what are some design basics that we can use to bring this piece into our home anytime, but then especially when our Christmas decor is in full swing?
Well, this time of year always gets me excited about decluttering, first of all. And I know that sounds kind of opposite of what you're asking me for, but I always feel like this desire to purge before the influx of all the things that will consume our attention, our time, and, our homes in the next few weeks. And so I always have this urge to get in and what can we remove before the inevitable influx of all the things? So decluttering for me is one of those first steps before we do that. And it's almost like a fall cleaning versus a spring cleaning. It's just that, what can we remove? What is too much? What do we have a lot of that we actually don't really need, that we could bless other people with? And I just love that particular side of things, because then it opens up space and gives us the freedom to be able to say, what is it that we actually truly need? And what is it that we could actually do without because we haven't needed it? And then to me, this gives me a greater sense of gratefulness too, which is what I want my family to also feel, because we have been so blessed. And if we start the season in that way, I think it just helps frame the rest of the weeks to come. But bringing in nature is always one of my fun things, as far as Christmas decor goes. And I love always choosing different colors or doing different things. And it's nice to have fancy trees and things like that. But one of the most inexpensive ways to really decorate is just to bring some of the outdoors in and just, we can spray paint and pine cones and pine leaves. And I mean, there's just a lot you can do if you're just slightly, you don't even have to be crafty, which is nice because not everyone is. But if you enjoy bringing some of nature inside, I think that you're going to find a lot of decor doesn't have to be expensive.
I know for me, being outside when it is, weather appropriate brings me so much peace. That is one of my favorite things, is to be out in nature. So that makes complete sense that it would feel more peaceful inside, maybe when it's freezing outside.
Yes. And the other thing I love, even if it's not related to Christmas, is making sure we have those cozy blankets and pillows and all the cozy stuff, so that when we are gathered together and it is kind of cold outside, or maybe not so nice or rainy or miserable, depending on where you live, everything indoors feels homey, feels comfy. And I think that touch, feel, smell, sound, all of those things all contribute to how that feels when you're indoors. So those cozy blankets are one of my favorite things. I love them. And so sometimes I want the room colder than it needs to be, just because, I need it to be cozy. We live down in the South. So, sometimes it's not always cold when it's supposed to be. And then the smells of Christmas, the pines, just those sugary cookie smells, all of those things, I think all contribute to our feeling of a sense of home.
So it doesn't all have to be stuff. It can
That's
be
right.
Multiple elements coming in to give you that experience.
Yes, for sure.
Christmas time is when we want to focus our eyes on the Prince of Peace. But often, for women, maybe especially, since we're creating all of this in our homes and our families, it's the most overwhelming time. So how do we infuse our hearts with that peace that we really want to feel?
Well, I think it's, first of all, impossible if we don't make a practice of a daily quiet time. Now, it doesn't have to be in the mornings. It can be any time of the day. There's no particular magic about having it be in the morning. But I have found for myself that if I don't take the time in the morning, it's really impossible to do it later in the day. And I know that time, especially if you've got young ones at home, it's very, very challenging. They get up when you least expect it, even if you try to protect time in the morning. And so trying to protect a small amount of time, even for the day, where you are just focused on your relationship, your personal relationship with the Lord, your growth, what he's trying to say to you today, that's going to go a long way to being able to produce peace in your home. If we don't pursue it daily, then it's really easy to say, well, I missed today. Well, I missed this week. Well, I missed this month. I'll wait till the new year and I'll get started again.
Yeah.
Those are things that I've experienced personally. I know all about that. And I know, like, saying, oh, well, next year, I'll do better. Next year, I'll do better. Just start. There's no magic in waiting till January 1st, to being able to start having that daily walk with the Lord. But that keeps me grounded. That keeps me peaceful. Things get crazy and schedules get crazy. And if you have more than one child, you can be going in multiple directions all day long sometimes, especially around the season, as more activities get added in than normal. And so in our crazy, crazy lives, I think protecting a block of time is so important for us to do that on a regular basis. Doesn't mean we're perfect people. And it doesn't mean we miss, but don't wait, till Monday, or don't wait until the next month or the next year to start that practice. And I think the second thing is don't feel like you have to do all the things. I've been so guilty of this in the past, of saying, oh, we have to create all these experiences. We have to make sure that, the memories are, fantastic and wonderful, and that the kids never, miss an activity, and, that we say yes to all the things. I think a decluttered schedule is also really important to our peace in this season. A few years ago, I actually asked my kids what they wanted the most for Christmas. Like, what was it that they just, this means Christmas to me. And the answers were really surprising. It wasn't, running around and doing crazy activities. I think a couple of them actually said, your breakfast casserole, which is something we make every Christmas morning, and I was like, so really it's that simple? Like, just
we're trying to plan more elaborate things and they just want some casserole.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I think we, women especially, like to put maybe more of that guilt on ourselves that we're not doing enough. And many times it's just being present, with our families. And I think we forget what a gift that is as well, and how much peace that would bring us if we just recognize that being present and not running to the next thing, or get your shoes on and get out the door, or, why is your hair not fixed yet? All of those things, being present and just being, in our pajamas for the day. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes it's just the silly stuff of being not in a rush and not going out the door and being present.
I love that idea of asking your kids what is most important to them.
It was a surprise.
And back to the quiet time, I try to do mine in the morning too. It does not always happen, but on the days that I do, I try to remember to pray that God will order my day and give me time to do the rest of the things that He sees fit for me to do.
Absolutely.
And I find that it works. It really does. So if you feel overwhelmed and busy, like you don't have time for that 15 minutes, add that prayer in, help me get through the rest of my day and get the things done I need to do. And He will help you with that.
Absolutely. No, I 100% agree with that.
You talked about hospitality and inviting other people in. What ideas do you have for us to get other people into our home? And how do we make them feel cozy, like you mentioned? And how do we share that peace with them that we're hopefully feeling ourselves?
Well, I firmly believe that our homes are supposed to be a tool for use and not for our comfort. And so I think when our perspective of what our home is supposed to be holds that view, it changes everything. If I think my home is for me, this is where I'm going to hide, this is where, my safe space, then it's a very different viewpoint. And I believe that what God has given us should be used for kingdom purposes. And so my home is one of those big things. It's a big expenditure. It's a big everything. It's a big part of our lives. And so when I can be more free to open my door to a neighbor, to maybe somebody I work with who may not know the Lord, or I don't know, I'm not really sure where they stand with their faith, not something we talk about at work, or any of those things. When I can open my door and invite somebody in and have a cup of coffee or tea, if you don't drink coffee, or a glass of lemonade, and just sit down and have a conversation, that is so much more disarming than trying to have a conversation at a workplace or out in public, or the home setting is just different. Sitting around a table is just different. You get to have conversations that you may not ordinarily have with other people, and getting to know your neighbors and getting to know the people in your community in a different way by opening your door and bringing them in, I think is just so special and meaningful. It just doesn't happen very much anymore. And yes, we should also do that in the church, with our people that we relate to in the church. But I think it's really even more important that we do it with people outside of the church, because their first interaction with somebody who may be church attenders or Christians might be us, and it might be around a table. And what a great opportunity to introduce them to a different way of thinking, to a different way of living. And we can only do that if we invite them in. They're, they may never ever darken the door of a church, but they might come in your home and have a meal. And so it doesn't have to be fancy. I think that that's always the challenge. We tend to think, oh, I don't have the right dishes. I don't have the right pottery. I don't have the right food to serve. I'm not a good cook. There's all kinds of reasons we can have for not being hospitable, but there's all kinds of answers for that too. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It could be paper plates and pizza. It really can be. That's how simple it could be. So I try to keep in mind for myself when I know it's going to be busy, especially this time of year is busy, right? I try to keep in mind, how could I have some things on the shelf that make me not panic? Because I'm a perfectionist and I want to do everything perfectly and wonderfully. And what that means, what that looks like in actual practice is usually me stuck in a kitchen somewhere while everybody else in the family gets to visit with the people that came in. And I get those last, I didn't even get my makeup on, why did they come early? So I'm always like that stressed out person by the time people have come in. And I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't want to be that stressed out, angry, upset that, I didn't get the baseboards clean before you came over person, because they're never going to look at the baseboards. Let's be honest. But I want it perfect. I don't want people to think bad things about me. And the reality is they don't. We make up a lot of stuff in our minds and they're just kind of happy that somebody wanted them in our space. Like, we're welcoming them into our space. That's kind of an intimate connection that we can build with people. And they don't care if it's pizza on paper plates or if you made a 5-course meal. It doesn't really matter. It's not about the food. It's not about the furniture. If you've got the nicest stuff, it's just about a place to sit and a place to sit and fellowship and congregate together in an informal way where you get to know somebody.
We're having a dinner party with some friends in a couple of weeks. We are hosting. And yes, I feel the same way. I want it to be lovely and fancy, but I've already been reminding myself, and thank you for saying it too, that it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
They are glad to be invited and they're not going to be looking at my baseboards.
Oh, 100%. And it's great. The people that are wired that way and they love to do those things and they have the opportunity and the means to do that. I don't want to take away from them either, because it is wonderful to also have something really beautiful laid out for people and set up. That's also really, really fun. But if that's what's going to stop you from being hospitable, that's where I would say, don't think about it in that way. This is not what it has to be. It can be very, very casual. And the baseboards will get clean one day, maybe. But, the whole house doesn't have to be perfect. There's been times where I've shut some doors, just so that I could let people come into those open spaces, and I've shut the bedroom door and you didn't want to open it while they were there because things would come spilling out. But, that it's more of a matter of our hearts than it is anything else.
I've thought back to times when I've been in other people's homes and
right.
Did I even see, I didn't.
It's true.
I didn't.
It's true. But for some reason, we build it up in our minds that how they view us is going to be, based on, whether we had a fully clean house that they could walk through all the way, or if we said, hey, don't go in there, you will regret it, So I've had some of those conversations before with friends, and they've been, oh, we've walked them through the house, but not that room, and we laugh because they have that room too. I mean, it's just a way of being vulnerable and transparent with people too, when we're just honest that we don't have the whole house put together, or we don't have the fanciest of things, but we're willing to share what we do have.
What final words of encouragement do you have for us as we move into this season in full swing here to bring that peace into our hearts and into our homes?
I think just the active reminder of the reason for the season. And it sounds a little cheesy to say, but I mean, we're celebrating the birth of Jesus and what that actually meant for us, in that he came for us to save us, redeem us. And yes, we celebrate the baby Jesus at this point, but his reason for coming was actually to die on that cross for us and to rise again and come back and save us. And so for me, when I continue to try to draw my attention back, yes, the gifts and the wrap and the decorations and all of that is wonderful and it's fun many times when it's not stressful. The reason for why we gather, the reason for why we celebrate is so much more. And if we sit in awe and wonder of that reason, it changes everything. It changes everything. It brings a peace. It brings a calm of not having to do it all, of not having to try to keep up with everybody else around me. It brings me a sense of, my goodness, of thankfulness, of just great awe. I can't think of a better word than awe, because it does fill me with such awe that this story is our story and that we get to celebrate what that means.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. At the end of the show, I ask all my guests for their favorites. What are 5 things that you are loving right now? Something you're wearing or drinking or watching?
Yeah. So this was kind of hard because I think I have way more than 5. And it's so funny because I don't think about it necessarily until somebody asks me questions like that. And so, a top of mind really were my Bible apps. I have a couple that I use on my phone and iPad, and mostly it's so convenient. So the Olive Tree Bible app is great because it holds my reading plans. And sometimes I alter, which plan I'm in the middle of. So I'm not always completing them when I'm supposed to. It's like a 30-day reading plan. Yeah, right. Like I get it done when I want to. No, I like that. I like the path, that clear path, and it's easy because it's digital. I don't have to keep up with any paper. And the other one is the Logos Bible app, which is helpful for me when I'm doing a deeper study or trying to understand maybe the origins of the different Hebrew or Greek, or if I'm trying to put a study together for a ladies group, or if I'm going to speak or do something. So Logos is my secondary one that I like to go to. So I bounce back and forth. My second one has to do with my breakfast, because I have a bajillion food allergies that I have found out about in the last few years, which makes breakfast kind of challenging. There's not a lot of food I can actually eat anymore. So I have plant protein shakes that I get to have, and I've learned to love them. And those are from a company called Isogenics. They're made with pea protein, which is very different. And then my hair is super thin. I have a lot of it, but it's super thin, so we have to keep it short. And so I like Sebastian's hairspray. It has a shaper where I can spray it. It's not hard and solid, but I can move it around if I need to, and it doesn't look like a helmet on my head. My fourth thing would be cashmere. I have learned in older age that I just love how it feels. I love that it keeps me warm without making me hot. And while I don't buy a lot of it because it's a lot more expensive than buying regular things, it also does help me declutter, because then I don't have a lot of extra sweaters. I have just a few favorites. So I think that that's actually a good thing for me.
Yeah.
And then what I love to drink, I love bubbly water. So I love seltzer water and any flavor. I'll try any of them, but I do kind of like that as a change up to my regular water drinking.
Those are so good. Oh, a nice cashmere sweater for Christmas.
Oh, yes. I mean, it is. It's one of those gifty, things that I love to put on my list. You don't have to buy me a lot of them. But, that one or two, I have been able to stay nice and cozy even when it's cold, but also not get too hot. I mean, that's really hard to do.
Perfect material for that. And lastly, Victoria, you have a book coming out soon.
Yeah, I do.
Tell me about that.
So it's called The Story of Good. It's based on about 20-ish mission-oriented businesses that are doing good around the world in different ways. And they actually all have different intentions. So some help the homeless, some help mental illness. They all contribute in different ways, but they've chosen to do business in order to do that, which is a little bit different than maybe going to be a missionary or starting a nonprofit or doing something like that. It's just an interesting way to tell their stories. So they're all gathered together in one volume. And because I love beautiful books, it's going to have a lot of photography and beautiful pictures in it of each of the brands and what they're doing. And just featuring stories that will inspire, because I hope that we will all see ourselves among the pages and see maybe something that we could do on our own, in our own lives, where we could do good for others.
So good.
I'm excited.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I have loved this time with you. I am inspired and I have some new ideas. I'm going to definitely do some decluttering. Will enhance the peace around here for sure. And I'm excited. I'm excited to think about ways that I can invite people in and really focus on the things that are most important. Maybe wipe a few things off our schedule, or like you suggested, ask my kids, what is the most important thing? What do we need to do to make it feel like Christmas? Because that's the feeling we want. And then thank you for the reminder that, our eyes should be on that focal point, on our Savior, the most important.
I love it. I'm so thankful to have the opportunity to talk with you today and talk with, your listeners and just try to encourage, it's simplifying. I have never regretted anytime I have simplified a schedule or something like that. It's always been something where I've looked back and said, I am so thankful, that we're not running ragged every night of the week this week, that we have this one night or we have 2 nights where we have protected time. And maybe that's time we invest in our spouse. Maybe it's time we invest in our kids. Maybe it's time we invest in our parents who may be looking for time we visit. It's never been a regret for me to limit my schedule. It's always been more stressful to have to keep up with all the other things when I haven't put some of those boundaries up early. And so if I could encourage anybody with anything, it is, to limit some of those things. All of the things are good many times, but they're not always the best.
Protect your schedule. Do what matters most.
Yes. Have
a fantastic, peaceful Christmas.
Yes. Indeed.
Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you, Johanna. It was so great to talk with you.
Thanks so much for listening. I hope you have some fresh ideas now on creating a peaceful home and heart as we enter into Christmas time. I love how Victoria said, don't wait until next week or the beginning of next year. Spend some time with God now, today. Find the link to Victoria's book, Heart and Home for Christmas, and all of her books, including her latest, The Story of Good, which releases December 13th. Friend, don't let the conversation stop when the show is over. Share your story and start your own conversations with the girls in your life. I will see you back here in January. Have a very Merry Christmas, and thanks for tuning in.